This video is for anybody who has ever wanted to start a podcast but feels like they don't know where to begin. I'm going to be taking the first few action items that I typically provide my clients with, and I'm going to be marrying that with the AI interface ChatGPT. It's been very popular since its launch November 30th or 29th of 2022, but we know that it's only as powerful as the person who is commanding it. What are the prompts that you're going to be feeding it? So in this video, I'm going to share 3 prompts with you that you can use over and over, even after the launch of your show, to help keep up your content workflow. The number one action item I typically recommend is coming up with a podcast trailer. So this can be on a show level that describes what your show is about and just giving the listener an expectation of what they're going to be hearing. Now, the next type of trailer is on an episode level. So let's say just kind of summarizing the episode and the meat of who you're talking to or what you're talking about and placing that at the front of the episode. First prompt that I'm going to tell ChatGPT is going to be based on a made-up podcast episode idea, but we're going to tell it, can you write me a podcast trailer for a show about meal prep tips for daily cooking? Okay, we let it populate. As you can see, it gave us a couple paragraphs that sounds pretty good initially. This doesn't sound like it's a robot or anything like that. But again, the purpose of this is not to take it word for word, but to use it as a jumping off point and to use it for your brain to go, this is what I didn't like, here's what I want to add, and here's what I want to take away. Now, let's say you want to expand this and make it a little longer or tell it to, hey, write me a funnier version of this or a wittier version of this. You can then follow up with a command to do so, and then pick what you like best, tweak it, make sure you add your own voice and language into it to make the most out of this exercise. And then when you're ready to actually record your trailer, you now have a script where you've thought about the best language up front instead of just ranting and rambling for minutes on end. Number 2, this prompt and action item is going to be related to the podcast description. So the description of your show or of each episode is something that, is even more important than maybe the audio portion, because it dictates whether somebody is going to actually click and listen or not. Without that piece of description, you're just relying on that title and people's willingness to give you their time to listen to that episode. So the prompt that I'm going to give it is actually based off of an actual podcast that I co-host with my buddy Blake. It's called the Trainers Lab Podcast, and we dissect the elements of successful remote coaching careers. So I'm going to use this prompt to see if it can give me a description that I feel kind of comfortable with. So I'm telling it, can you write me a podcast description for a show that's about studying what makes fitness coaching careers successful? Okay, so we let it populate, and all right, I don't like the name of the show that it puts here, but as far as everything else here, it sounds pretty good. I might tighten it up, I might add or remove some things, but for a description for an episode that's about fitness coaching careers, or for a show that's about that, this is a pretty good description. That's a starting point, right? And it then gives me something to whittle away at or to say, I don't like this. But I find that this prompt is really helpful in coming up with the description for each show, which is an important part of it. The more you publish episodes, the more you realize that if you're not writing a description, you're relying on people to either read the rest of the show notes, and if you don't have any show notes, then their generosity in giving you their time. So instead of that, we want to give people a preview of what the episode is about. So we've covered the trailer, we've covered the podcast description. The next part that I want to share with you is show notes, okay? Writing show notes for an episode or for your first few episodes can be really helpful because it gives the listener a way to preview what you're going to be discussing before they choose to dive in, which in today's day and age and early on, it can be really, really helpful to have this part added just from a user experience standpoint. Now, this makes it a little bit tougher because now you have to actually listen or read through the transcript and then pick apart, a nice heading or subheading that you can write for the show note that's a bullet point. So what I'm going to do is actually take the transcription of this episode, which putting in the full transcription of this episode wouldn't work because that's just too long and ChatGPT wouldn't accept it. So what I'm going to take, and I've tested this with 20 minutes, 15, 10, and I found that 5 minutes of talking in a transcription format is something that ChatGPT will take. So what I'm going to say is, can you write a bullet point for podcast show notes summarizing this text? And then I paste the text, right? I typically get this using otter.ai, but you can use other transcription softwares out there if you want. But why I chose the first 5 minutes here is because in the first 5 minutes is typically where you cover who the guest is, what you're going to be talking about. They might share a little bit of background on themselves. And so the first 5 minutes might give me the most indication on what the show might be about. And how do I now take that and dilute it into like one sentence? Less than 10 words. So if we were to cross-check actually the piece of text I put in and, what it spit back out, it's not really that bad. The point is here, if we can give it a piece of text to process, it can summarize and dilute it down into 10 words, which is kind of a difficult thing to do. The shorter you have to condense some writing into, I think the harder it can be, right? Because you have to get it right. And so you can let this take a couple cracks at coming up with the subheading that then forms your show notes, which then also, those can form promotable clips and titles maybe for those clips. So if you do a good job of coming up with a good bullet point for the show note using this early on, it then sets you up for success in the later parts of post-production and promotion. Having these written pieces of text that ChatGPT helps you with and helps massage your ideas and get the ball rolling is massively helpful, and especially if it helps you improve the speed of implementation. So if you give it a shot, make sure you drop a comment below. Let me know how it works out for you, and give this channel a subscribe if this video was useful and you want to stay in touch. But thanks for hanging out today, and I'll see you next time.